He did not go to the gates of Auschwitz to fight with a blade or a rifle, but to perform a far more dangerous act of rebellion. He went to bear witness. As the Nazi machinery began grinding at the edges of the Polish town of Auschwitz in 1940, Wiltold Pilecki, a cavalry officer in the underground resistance, proposed a plan that his peers considered a descent into madness. He would intentionally allow himself to be swept up in a German street roundup under a false identity, ensuring his deportation to a place from which no one was expected to return. He entered the inferno not as a victim of circumstance, but as a volunteer for a mission to dismantle the camp's anonymity from the inside. Upon his arrival, Pilecki was stripped of his name and transformed into prisoner 4859. For 947 days, he navigated a landscape of industrialized slaughter where men were dissolved by starvation, backbreaking labor, and the whims of the SS. Yet, while the world remained largely ignorant of the scale of the horror, Pilecki was building a ghost network. He founded a clandestine organization among the inmates to provide food, medicine, and a fragile sense of hope, all while meticulously documenting the camp's transition into a factory of genocide. He smuggled his reports out through the laundry and the pockets of released workers, providing the Allies with the first comprehensive evidence of the gas chambers and the escalating death toll. In 1943, realizing that his written warnings were being met with disbelief or strategic hesitation by the outside world, Pilecki orchestrated a daring escape during a night shift at the camp bakery. He fled into the woods under a hail of gunfire, eventually reuniting with the resistance to deliver a chilling affirmation that everything he had reported was true, though words alone could never capture the depth of the atrocity. His escape was not a retreat, but a pursuit of justice, as he spent his first moments of freedom drafting even more urgent appeals for a military strike against the camp's infrastructure. He carried with him the heavy burden of those he left behind, haunted by the faces of men who looked to him as their only connection to a world that seemed to have forgotten them. Even as he recuperated from the physical toll of his imprisonment, his mind remained tethered to the barbed wire, calculating how to force the Allies to acknowledge the systematic extermination he had seen with his own eyes. Tragically, the liberation of Poland from Nazi rule brought no peace for Pilecki. As the Soviet-backed communist regime took hold, his unwavering devotion to a truly sovereign Poland made him a threat to the new occupiers. The man who had survived the worst the Third Reich could offer was arrested by his own countrymen's secret police and subjected to interrogations so brutal he claimed Auschwitz had been just a game by comparison. This betrayal by a regime that claimed to be liberators was a final, bitter irony for a man who had sacrificed everything for the soul of his nation. During his trial, he stood with a quiet, terrifying dignity, refusing to beg for a life he had already offered up to his country years before. His execution was carried out with a haste that betrayed the state's fear of his enduring influence as they sought to extinguish a flame they could not control. Even in his final moments, he looked his captors in the eye, embodying a moral superiority that no amount of state-sponsored violence could diminish. In 1948, he was executed as an enemy of the state and buried in an unmarked grave, his name scrubbed from the history books for decades. It was only after the collapse of the Iron Curtain that Wiltold Pilecki's story surged back into the light, restoring him as a global symbol of moral clarity and unbreakable faith. He remains the only person known to have voluntarily entered the heart of Auschwitz.